Music is more than just music. It's a reflection of your consciousness. Really, music can be used to reflect your soul. And when I say your soul, ultimately, I'm talking about God's soul. Because your soul doesn't belong to you, it belongs to God. So, what is music? What is sound? Or any of our five senses for that matter? We don't fully know. Just because we label something with a name and a description of the way that it functions, that doesn't mean that we fully understand it. All we can truly say we know for sure is that hearing music is an experience that takes place within our consciousness. If you weren't there to hear a song within your personal reality, would your experiencing of that song exist? No, because within your reality, the hearing of that particular song never happened within your reality. You never experienced it. And keep in mind, your reality is the only reality you ever experience or will ever experience. You can't have an experience of something that's happening outside of your consciousness or your observation. And that kind of goes back to, like the whole double slit experiment thing. And that old question about if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? I used to say yes, but now I say no, because now I know beyond a shadow of the doubt that it's not possible to separate the observed from the observer. It's impossible to separate the observer from the observed. So no, the tree doesn't make a sound if an observer isn't there to collapse that wave function. You see, what they never wanted us to know is that your observation or your perception is incredibly important. By perceiving, your consciousness literally collapses the wave of probability into a particle and brings it into perceivable existence. Through your consciousness observing, you experience your life. And really, you don't have a life, you are life. Do you really think that when God created you, he said, okay, I'm done, I think I'm going to stop creating now? No, of course not. Every moment is a moment of creation. And, I think that's why he created us. We're holographic consciousness fractals of God, which is amazing. God is using our consciousness to experience his creation. We also play a role too in creating through the act of observing. Again, think double slit experiment. But God is always creating. It's never ending, which makes sense, because that's what infinity is. There is no end. Every moment that you perceive or observe, you are constantly collapsing waves of probability into perceivable existence. What we call our five senses are actually different modes of experiencing God's creation. It's like a simultaneous expression of creation and experience happening in our consciousness all at once. And where is the line drawn between our experience and what God experiences? That I can't tell you. It's kind of like saying stand up and walk towards yourself. You can't, because you already are yourself. And I can kind of hear some people now saying that I'm saying some new age BS. I'm not saying that we are God. I'm saying that we are a holographic consciousness fractal of God. What I'm saying is based on logic. I mean, how else do you think it's possible for your observation, your consciousness, to have the ability to collapse a probability wave into a particle? Where do you think that ability to do that comes from? It comes from God. It has to. As teeny tiny fractals of God, we were given that ability. And really, it's not even us doing the collapsing of the wave, it's our God center doing it. So, case in point, I want you guys to try this experiment. I want you to use your ability to collapse the probability wave from music into an audible message from God, which sounds crazy, I know, but it really isn't though once you experience the results for yourself. And people get some pretty good results. So I want to quickly go over the methodology so I can share some of my results with you guys. First step is to change the communication angle. So instead of only using the song and seeing it as a story about a romantic relationship, make the choice to observe or imagine that the meaning of the song has expanded to include higher forms of relationships. So we're not talking about the song being about boyfriend and girlfriend stuff. The song is going to be talking about your relationship with your higher power, and it doesn't really matter which song you choose. Just know that when the song mentions love, that it's talking about the love between you and your higher power, not like romantic love. So while listening to the song, the very first step in this experiment, and probably the most important step, is to ask yourself in your mind, if my higher power could sing me a song, what would my higher power sing to me about? Asking yourself this question will help you to collapse that probability wave into an observation that yields higher frequency results. Just know when I say higher power, I'm talking about God. But anyways, your observation of who you observe is singing the lyrics to you is called a communication angle. Depending on how your observation collapses the probability wave, multiple different communication angles can be present within a single song. For example, you could observe that one verse in a song is being sung to you by your higher power, while another verse in the same song seems like it's being sung to you by a good friend. And really, it all depends on how well you're able to focus your communication angle on your higher power. So you're going to want to, in your mind, you're going to want to keep asking yourself, if my higher power could sing me a song, what would my higher power sing to me about? That's extremely important that you do that, because that's going to help with you collapsing that probability wave. So the more you're able to focus your communication angle on your higher power, while your mind is simultaneously observing or decoding the auditory probability wave, the better. So as you're listening to the song, be focusing on God. Is it possible for two people hearing the same song to observe different messages even though they are hearing the exact same words? Yes, each person has their own unique perspective. As living beings, we were all given the ability to collapse probability waves through our observation in order to construct the reality that we perceive. This is proven by the double slit experiment. As the vibration of your consciousness starts to rise, you'll be able to decode higher levels of meaning from the music. Individuals experiencing a lower negative level of awareness while doing the experiment may reflect their lower negative level of awareness onto the meaning of the song. Remember, your mind acts as a filter that the information flows through. The number one rule to follow when conducting this experiment is that lyric decoding must be mostly positive. Why? Because a loving relationship with your higher power is based on a positive, higher frequency connection. You have to match frequencies. Messages can be decoded through wordplay with metaphors and homophones. Feel free to use metaphors because metaphors are one way to convey a deeper meaning. Metaphors are words or phrases that are used to give words a different meaning that differs from the literal meaning of the word. So, for example, the word night could be used as the metaphor to mean a depressing time in one's life instead of the literal meaning of the sky after sunset. Another example is using the word day to represent an awakening to life that is connected with God instead of defining the meaning of day as a period where the sun's not out. You can use the following metaphor examples below or come up with your own metaphors. So here are some examples of metaphors. Alive represents the best version of yourself. Light represents love. And all of these metaphors, I didn't sit down ahead of time before listening to the song and write out a list of metaphors. All of these metaphors have just kind of come up naturally as I'm hearing the song. So I've been doing this on my own for a while. Then I started doing groups. So just over time, all of these different metaphors just started to kind of pop up. So it's not really something that you'll have to sit down and, work really hard on and make out a physical list. So they'll just kind of come to you as you're listening to the music. But call me. So in the song, when you're hearing the lyrics and you mention them sing about call me, that could represent asking for help. Home could represent a place where a person can connect with their higher power. When you're listening to the lyrics and you hear the song mention the word asleep, that word could represent being blind to your own potential to be great. Awake represents being fully aware of the best version of yourself. On represents being conscious or awake to a positive state of mind that you can tap into to form a stronger relationship with your higher power. The words awake and on are kind of like synonyms. They kind of mean the same thing. So when you're listening to the song and they mention on, they mention the word on, it basically means awake. World could represent yourself. House could represent yourself. When you're listening to the lyrics and they sing the word words, words could represent the logos or word of your higher power. Ocean or river could represent a place where you're able to merge or connect with your higher power. Home represents a place where you connect with your higher power. Weather represents your emotions. A lot of songs you'll hear talking about, sunshine or rain. It's a much deeper meaning to that. Phone or radio represents your higher power's natural ability to communicate with your soul. So when you're listening to this song and it mentions a phone or a radio, it's not the literal meaning where it's like a physical, phone that you're using to dial, but it's a metaphor. It's the same with the word radio. When they sing about the word radio in a song, represents your higher power's natural ability to communicate with your soul. So walk could also be a metaphor, and then dance could be a metaphor. And another way that decoding is going to happen is through homophones. Listen for homophones that denote a positive meaning within the song. Homophones are words that sound the same but have more than one spelling and meaning. For example, you could switch the word no to no within the lyrics to alter the meaning of the verse. Another example is switching the word see to mean see to alter the meaning of the lyrics. Other examples of homophones include sun and sun, new and new, here and here, high and high, whole and whole, one and one, stare and stare, wine and wine, night and night, and peace and peace. Wordplay can also include, but is not limited to, inserting or taking away periods to form new sentences in order to decode new meaning, combining two words to form one word in order to decode a new meaning within the song, separating a single word into two words to decode a new meaning. There is no limits really with wordplay because there are no limits within poetry, and music is a form of poetry. And often, the words themselves won't even need to change because it may be enough to only change the meaning behind how the word is defined. Remember, songs tell the story of our lives. Okay, so now that we have the methodology for how to do the experiment, now it's your job, or technically your God Center's job, to use your perception to collapse and decode the wave through your observation. Now, I can't play any songs on this video because I'll get a copyright strike, but I want you to pause this video and listen to the song we're going to use for this particular experiment. Now, when you're listening to the lyrics, ask yourself in your mind, if my higher power could sing me a song, what would my higher power sing to me about? And really focus on hearing the lyrics as though your higher power were singing the words to you. Why is it so important that you make the choice to observe a higher communication? Because by doing that, you actually raise the vibration wave of the lyrics, which sets the stage to make it easier for a higher meaning to be transmitted through the song. Now, it may take, a little practice to tune in to a higher, more positive way of thinking about the song in order to pick up on the messages. But the first step, and probably the most important step, is changing the communication angle of the song. Once you're able to do that, then the metaphors and wordplay will start to just flow naturally from the music. And if you have time, you may want to even print the PDF handouts in the description below. That way you can kind of have a template to use, and you can just start out by circling whichever words stick out to you as having a positive meaning from your higher power as you're listening to the music. And what I've noticed is that different words or verses will stick out to you more than others. So don't put a lot of pressure on yourself to decode the whole song. It may only be a couple words in the entire song that stick out to you as having a higher meaning, and that's totally fine. Now, if you can, you want to be in a relaxed state when you're listening. I'm going to put a link to the James Taylor song in the description below. So pause this video, click the song in the description below by James Taylor, then come back to this video, and just remember, while you're listening to the James Taylor song, be asking yourself throughout the song, what kind of message would my higher power want to tell me through the words of this song? Okay, so now that you're back from listening to the Carolina in My Mind song, I want to show you some of the messages that I picked up from the song. Now, keep in mind, even though we're decoding the same song, different people will receive different messages. The amazing thing about this experiment is that each person gets an individualized message from God. And I think that's because in God's eyes, each person is a unique spark with their own special inner reflection. It's almost like we're antennas that are picking up on different messages from the one universal signal of love that's being sent out. And our mind is a filter that the message kind of has to sift through. Also, the messages that you decode are going to depend a lot on which level of awareness your observation collapses the probability wave at. Okay, so to collapse the probability wave, I asked myself in my mind while listening to the James Taylor song, if my higher power could sing me a song, what would my higher power sing to me about? Now, the song starts out with, in my mind, I'm gone to Carolina. Keep that in my mind lyric part of the song in mind, no pun intended, because what the song is saying is that all of this, your understanding of all of this higher meaning from the music is happening within mind. The question is, whose mind is it? Does your mind really belong to you, or does it belong to God? I think our mind belongs to God, whether we're conscious of it or not. I feel like this part of the song could be a reference to the connection between your mind and God's mind, because really what we are, like I said earlier, we're holographic consciousness fractals within God's mind or his dream. And I'm not going to go too deep into that because I don't want this video to be too long, but if you're interested in that concept, I'll put a link to my hologram theory and dream theory video below. But I decoded from that part of the song, in my mind, or God's mind, I've gone to Carolina. Then the song goes on to say, can't you see the sunshine? So right there, I'm observing my first homophone. So by asking myself, as I'm listening to the song, if my higher power could sing me a song, what would my higher power sing to me about? My mind was able to collapse the probability wave and observe or pick up that sun, S-U-N, is a homophone for son, S-O-N, which could mean son or daughter. So in doing that, the message I picked up from my higher power is, can't you see that you're my daughter? And can't you see that as my daughter you should be shining with my light or love? A lot of times it's kind of harder to put these personal messages that you get into words than it is to understand in real time as you're listening to the music, because it's like a direct communication that we hear within our mind as we're listening to the music. But in order for me to convey the direct message, I have to figure out a way to kind of put it into words for you guys, if that makes sense. The next part of the song says, Karen, she's a silver sun, you best walk her away and watch it shine. Now, if the communication angle of the song is my higher power singing the song, then for me, Karen is decoded as caring within yourself, or care in. And the message from my higher power that I decoded was, I put my care or love in you, my son or daughter. By focusing on the question, if my higher power could sing me a song, what would my higher power sing to me about? I collapsed the probability wave and observed or picked up on a metaphor in the part of it that says, you best walk her way and watch it shine. I decoded walk as a metaphor that represents progressing or moving forward with my life. So the message that I heard from my higher power is As you progress and move forward in life, I will watch it shine with my light or love. It goes on to say, and watch her watch the morning come. Now, I actually got multiple messages from that line. First off, morning immediately stood out to me as a metaphor for a time of waking up to a deeper connection with my higher power. Because think about it, what do you do in the morning? We wake up out of our sleep and we see the sunrise, right? Well, maybe we will be the sons and daughters that will rise up to God, you know? And oh yeah, just like a side note, the metaphor mourning, mourning, didn't even come up for me during my observation, because that form of mourning is a lower frequency meaning that has nothing to do with my personal relationship that I have with God. So I just wanted to make that clear for any people who, would maybe want to try to attach their own lower frequency meaning to my personal observation that I decoded for myself. So I just thought that was worth mentioning. Anyways, I also decoded more wordplay in the word come. I observed come to mean to actually go or leave with my higher power. So I think if you look at where I inserted the comma in red, you can kind of get a better idea of how the word come is being used. Real quick, the part that says a silver tear appearing, now I'm crying, ain't I? So since I'm using my observation to collapse the probability wave into a higher vibration that resonates with my higher power by imagining or observing that the lyrics are being sung to me by my higher power, tears have nothing to do with sadness or any negative lower emotion. For me, tear was decoded as a reference to happy tears of joy, which, I'm just going to be honest with you that will happen as you continue to do this experiment. Like, as you continue with these experiments, with time, you will cry tears of joy as you get these messages from your higher power. So the message that I decoded from my higher power in this line was, when tears of joy appear, it's really me that is crying those tears of joy through you, ain't I? And that's the thing about this experiment. The lines between pronouns like you, me, we, they, your, my, he, she, us, I, those lines between who a specific pronoun is referring to really starts to blur when it comes to who exactly we're talking about in the song. And I guess it makes sense that the lines between pronouns would start to blur when we really consider that God encompasses oneness and love. So for example, often you'll hear your higher power refer to himself as you when you're listening to the music. Like in this line where it says, a silver tear appearing, now I'm crying, ain't I? When he says I'm crying, ain't I, he's really talking about you crying, but it's almost like God is saying that he's so close to you that the word I and you can be used interchangeably in the lyrics, if that makes sense. So, and I know some people out there will try to say, well, this song was made by so-and-so and they work for the elite music industry, so the meaning can't possibly be about God. But guess what, though? It doesn't matter who is singing the song, because this experiment is meant to be a reflection of your own God-centered consciousness. And we have to remember that source is at the root of every human voice that's singing. That person would not even exist to be able to sing if God wasn't the source of not only that person, but the sound wave itself, or the sound frequency itself. So, continuing with the experiment, I ask myself in my mind, if my higher power could sing me a song, what would my higher power sing to me about? After the part in the song that says, "A silver tear appearing, now I'm crying, ain't I?" The very next line is "Gone to Carolina" in my mind. Then it goes on to say, "There ain't no doubt in no one's mind that love's the finest thing around. Whisper something soft and kind." By focusing on my higher power communication angle as I'm listening to the music, a metaphor for Carolina got decoded through wordplay. If you look at the word Carolina, it's fairly easy to see how it kind of breaks down, with the first part sounding like the word care and the line ending becoming a metaphor for phone line. So essentially it turns into meaning a caring phone line that connects me with my higher power. Then after that, the song even goes on to say, "There ain't no doubt in no one's mind that love's the finest thing around." So it's even telling you not to have any doubt that this love from your higher power is the finest thing around. And it's saying, trust yourself. Don't dismiss this decoding as wishful thinking. Don't have any doubt that this is about love. And the very next line says, "Whisper something soft and kind." So I'm decoding that as my higher power literally saying that he's whispering this meaning, i.e. something soft and kind in my ear. The whisper part of that line implies that this message is something that you have to tune into in order to hear. It's just like if someone is whispering to you, you have to pay attention to what's being said in order to hear it. I mean, when you do these experiments with your own music, some of these messages are going to come to you in such a blatantly obvious way, it'll blow your mind. Also, there's a homophone in there with no, N-O, and no, K-N-O-W, when the lyric says, "in no one's mind." So I was able to decode multiple meanings from that line through homophone wordplay. It decoded into "there ain't no doubt in no, K-N-O-W, one's mind," and the "one's mind" part could even be further decoded as one being a metaphor for the one or God. And the last part of the song that I'm going to decode is the part that says, "Hey babe, the sky's on fire, I'm dying, ain't I?" So from that communication angle of my higher power, I decoded the word fire to be a metaphor for the burning passion that God has for us and that we have for God. The line mentions the sky's on fire because as you start to awaken, the way the sky looks will literally change. And no, I'm not so much talking about chemtrails. I'm talking about the actual dimensions or space of the sky in terms of how you perceive it. It will look much more expanded, and some clouds will look much closer. Sunsets will get more beautiful too. Second part of that line says, "I'm dying, ain't I?" The "I'm dying, ain't I" is a reference to the old me dying. The old me that assumed that I was somehow separated from God is dying so the new me can be reborn. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop there with that song. I really encourage all of you to try this experiment on your own. Not just with this song, but with many other songs. What may be helpful in the beginning stages is to have the lyrics written down so you can kind of follow along with the lyrics as you're listening. And I'll put a link in the description to some worksheets they're meant to do. All you have to do to collapse the probability wave through your observation is first ask yourself as you're listening to the lyrics, if my higher power could sing me a song, what would my higher power sing to me about? And you can try it, when you're driving in the car, or maybe you're at the grocery store and like there's music playing on the intercom. You can just kind of try it nonchalantly like that. So just, ask yourself that question as you're hearing the music, and just focus on hearing the lyrics as though your higher power were singing the words to you. And then listen for a positive meaning through wordplay. Whether that wordplay is through metaphors and homophones or other kinds of wordplay, it doesn't matter. It's all about just connecting your consciousness to source. And a lot of what you'll be able to decode will depend on your state of consciousness or awareness as you're hearing the music. You may hear a song and get a message, then at a later time hear that same song when you're in a slightly different state of awareness and pick up on a different message from the same lyrics in the same song. One thing I'm learning is that there are layers and layers of messages, which I guess makes sense because there are layers and layers of different states of awareness and different states of emotions that we can experience at any given time. And keep in mind your vibration. The vibration that you have while you're hearing the music can impact the message if you let it. Because this realm has been filled with so much negativity in general, we have to shield the message from being, in a way, contaminated by the negativity. And we can do that by simply being conscious of using positive thinking when we're decoding the lyrics in order to keep the vibration of the probability wave leaning more towards the positive than the negative. When we use wordplay, even lyrics that can seem negative at first glance can become positive, which has a lot to do with switching up your perspective on who you imagine or observe is singing the lyrics to you. The last thing I'm going to say is that there are so many layers or levels that the wave can be observed from. It's a probability wave, so it's your act of observing it that collapses it. So we really have to learn how to tune in to the higher layers of awareness to get the most results out of this experiment. I mean, you could still decode the song from a lower level of awareness, but all I'm saying is, in order to access more knowledge from our higher power, we have to really work on being in a relaxed, positive state of mind when we're collapsing the probability wave. Anyways, thanks for listening, and in the future, I'll be making more God experiment videos. So, Happy New Year's, guys.